Ipala le ma'a ay lepala le upu. Stones decay but not words. What this means is rocks can turn to dust, but words are so powerful that they endure for a long time. This year's National History Day theme is about how people, ideas, and events are a turning point in history. An article was published July 1961 in Reader's Digest by Clarence W. Hall that was a turning point in the history of American Samoa. Pemerica Tali'ili, a retired employee of the government of American Samoa, explained his life from the 1930s to 1950s.
Okay, in the early 50s, the U.S. Navy that administered the island since the World War II up to the late 50s left. In fact, they left in 1952, and I came on island in 1953. When I came on the island from from Western Samoa, the people were struggling financially. They didn't have much of spending money because they thought at that time the Navy left, and the Navy left with all the money because the Navy had employments, and people worked for the U.S. military. Not only the people that worked as civilians, but there were fita-fitas.
David Heydrich, an officer for Historical Preservation Office, explains his life in American Samoa in the early 1960s.
Prior to the early 1960s, American Samoa's infrastructure was in very bad repair. The roads were falling apart. The government buildings were old and dilapidated and hadn't been maintained well. And the educational system was far from adequate. There weren't enough teachers, and there weren't enough school buildings. Students were being taught in traditional fales, and they didn't have textbooks and kind of facilities that you would expect for a school system.
In the July 1961 issue of the Reader's Digest magazine, Clarence W. Hall wrote an article calling American Samoa America's Shame in the South Seas. Reader's Digest was the most popular U.S. magazine at that time and read by people all over the world. So many people read Mr. Hall's words as the world looked to America to see what they would do to make a change. Mr. Hall explains in his article that the visitor is shocked to encounter government buildings peeling and rotting on their foundations, beautiful Pong Pong Bay marred and befouled by hideous overwater outhouses, ruddy and teach-iron roads unrepaired for years, crumbly reservoirs, and an ancient leaky water mains that cause frequent water shortages. David Heydrich explains life after the 1960s.
After 1960, the U.S. And throughout the 60s put a lot of money into the local economy. One of the primary reasons was because of an article written by Clarence Hall, and in his article he talked about how bad the infrastructure was, how bad the education was here, and his article was published in a very popular magazine called the Reader's Digest. And so this was in the context of the Cold War, and it looked really bad that the United States, one of its territories, was so poverty-stricken. And because of that article, President Kennedy decided to push to a big development project in American Samoa. So one of the biggest projects was educational television, and that vastly improved the educational system here. Because there was a big shortage of teachers, rather than bringing in a bunch of teachers from the U.S., they decided to try television. So they built television studios, and they built elementary schools throughout the territory. And then in those elementary schools, they had televisions, and the televisions were the medium of education. They would do the lessons in the studios and broadcast them to the schools.
I was fortunate to be in touch with Margaret Urin with the help of her daughter Phoebe. Margaret worked in the ETV art department. She described the 50 or more producers, directors, engineers, and camera technicians that worked on the ETV project. Margaret explains that the first TV transmitter and studio were up and running in mid-1964. The TV transmitters broadcast classes through grades 1 to 12. According to Margaret, all the equipment arrived in American Samoa in working order and the studio construction was amazing. Margaret Urin writes that the goal for ETV was to teach English and for students to get the tools they needed to compete with the 20th century. Mick McCudden, retired from working for the government of American Samoa, describes how the Development Modernization Project improved the infrastructure of American Samoa.
I worked for almost 5 years at the peak of all the modernization activity, and I worked on just about every major project there was. We did all of our own drawings and design work in public works at that time, and I was a draftsman, so I worked on the main dock warehouse, the TV studio building, the TV transmitter station, the cableway, Leone, Pangaitua, and Manua high schools, a lot of the elementary school classrooms, the buildings, the roads, the electrification of the island, the water systems, the civil engineering systems, almost all of the major projects, the airport terminal building, and many, many more.
What do you think were the most important changes on the island that happened as part of your work on the modernization project?
I think probably the most important changes were those infrastructure projects that sort of underlie all of modern living, the electrification of the island, the government water systems, the government wastewater systems. Those are the things that contributed most to the health of the people and to economic development.
As a result of the changes from the Development and Modernization Project, another article was published July 1965 in Reader's Digest by Clarence W. Hall. Hall writes, "Somewhere on Earth there may be a more spectacular example of revolutionary change in the area and its people, but in the years of roving the world I have not seen it. Today this former South Sea slum is the showplace of the Pacific. Other islanders come to stare enviously at American Samoa's new schools and roads. Educators come to observe Samoa's experiment, the first anywhere in almost total teaching by television." Today, American Samoa can still be America's showplace in the Pacific. David Vaiafe explains that the Lonely Planet named American Samoa the 5th most popular American travel destinations.
When The Lonely Planet announced the top 10 US destinations on December the 5th last year, live on CNN and via the website, 2.5 billion people watched that announcement. So in dollar value, that's worth hundreds of millions of advertising dollar for American Samoa, which we got for free. And it's helped increase our profile worldwide as well, and to be ranked along, next to to be ranked by a well-known brand, is even much better for American Samoa. And we can only grow our tourism from this point. Our tourism has developed since our office was established 4 years ago. We are the last country to embrace tourism in the South Pacific, but we have a lot more to offer than what other places have to have. We started off in 2010 with 9 cruise ships. 2011 we went to 12. Last year we had 20 cruise ships, and this year we've got 16 cruise ships so far, with 3 more pending. So we've grown our tourism market. We have a lot to offer in terms of ecotourism, soft adventure, and American Samoa is a very unique place in terms of its association with the United States of America and also within the South Pacific itself. So tourism for us is a growing industry on the territory, and if all goes well in the next 5 to 10 years, it will be the #1 economic earner, employer for the territory.
I wanted to end with a quote by Joseph Conrad: "Words can set whole nations in motion. Give me the right word and I'll move the world." Words printed in famous magazines to Lonely Planet travel guides about American Samoa have been a major turning point in our island's history.